VoyMonk vlog number 99. And it's Friday. Actually, this particular vlog I had thought about doing yesterday. And I decided, you know what, I'm going to wait until Friday. Because this is one of those vlogs that I just anticipated with the fact that I wanted to bring it up, the fact that I got kind of a little more that I want to say about it that's not going to necessarily fit with the ones that I normally do during the week. But here's the thing that I guess me as not just a man, but a human being, as a person, that I don't really get, which is when, to me, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. And I'm before the jokes. Yeah, that's something that ugly people say, which is true, which is a kind of truth. But it's also kind of not true that, beauty is an objective type of thing, meaning that, as long as there's a consensus in a thinking, that what is beautiful and what isn't. And I'm certainly, like I said, not trying to be all negative. Everyone has, their point of view in that. But the thing that's just kind of weird is that I think it's strange that individuals don't necessarily see beyond the scope when in terms of marketing and the way things are held up versus the way that they'll be. And I first want to mention the fact that 99.9%, I think, things that are put in front of everyone, and I'm sure that their scientific basis is for, the actual dimensions and the way that a face looks and a person, is whatever, that's what beauty is in a overall general consensus versus not. And I'm not really speaking to that. I'm speaking to the fact that marketing, I think selling products, I think, getting people to be impressed by something that ultimately is very subjective, even though it doesn't seem like it. One of the things I think is kind of humorous to a degree is that when you look on YouTube, especially videos that review and tell you about surgeries that people weren't aware certain celebrities have had, or actors or models and things of that nature. And sometimes, most of the time, it'll go into like speculation of what kind of procedures that they've had done and whatever and whatnot. And I think it's par for the course, because I think if you spend probably most of your time in life being in front of a camera, that it then becomes your bread and butter, and it has to be something that you put time and investment in. The thing of it is, though, is that, I understand there's that concept of the ideas, reality versus, the fiction that gets placed before us. And my true sense is that, whether it's just like art, I think beauty is very much subjective. I also think that along with that comes the thing I wanted to mention, as far as when you usually sometimes make a compliment or comment towards someone. And I think you got to always be careful of that as well, especially when it, comes to women, for myself, because women get compliments probably a whole lot. And even if maybe you're not necessarily bad looking, or maybe you don't look as well as someone else might think you do, or someone who looks worse, like myself, I think it can be very difficult to believe sincerity when it comes to hearing a compliment, or someone who's saying something like, "I think you're beautiful." Because there was one of a few different ways to take it. You can say thank you and, take it as a compliment, and maybe it makes you feel good. You can, say, okay, yeah, well, thank you, I appreciate that. And maybe you don't really believe it when you hear it from someone else, because maybe you think that if you indulge in that a little too much, then there will always be the expectation Usually someone saying something that you like, maybe it's too good to be true kind of sense. And then, of course, there lies giving someone else power in that specific instance. And then, of course, should they then maybe decide to ask someone out or asks, to advance on that and get rejected, then there's always the opportunity that it goes the other way. Well, I never found you good looking anyways, or I exaggerated when I said that you're beautiful, or, maybe go into just being nasty or whatever. And the thing is that anytime, there's that possibility, opening up and being vulnerable to someone who, may indeed be admiring your beauty or saying something nice because they truly think in that way, even though as individuals, maybe we don't see ourselves. I don't think we can see ourselves the way other people do. That, we like to be, I think everyone likes to be appreciated and seen for who they are. And maybe the hopes that maybe we can be beautiful and people can appreciate us for who we are. All right. But then, of course, the other, I would say the last way of kind of being approached by it is just to simply, maybe really just not believe it. Think that it's really kind of more or less something that's just being said to be nice, which sometimes it is, or maybe it's a measure of trying to control or manipulate someone, which it can be. I just think the sad thing is that everything that I'm talking about obviously comes down to perception. And I think that's probably the last way that I can think of to see it, is that obviously, well, who's saying it, right? Someone's calling you beautiful or giving you a compliment or something like that. What context makes it where they would see that and have that kind of appreciation versus not. So, but that said, like I said, I was saying, I don't know. I think it's a kind of a sad state that oftentimes models and actors and people that are kind of put up as being beautiful, which many times they are. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder, but not everyone has the same taste. Not everyone has the same view of beauty and what they find physically attractive or appealing. And I think the majority, despite the consensus that I was mentioning in terms of scientific and what people place inside of a box, I do think that subtle marketing, manipulation, and other things kind of tend to have a lot more to do with that than anything else. Meaning, for example, something that was kind of pointed out about Tom Cruise, and if you're listening to this, you might know where I'm about to head with the whole tooth thing. There was actually a female colleague, a friend, someone I worked around or with, who made some mention about the placement of Tom Cruise's front tooth. And apparently, according to her, once you see it, you can't unsee it. And I wasn't necessarily sure. I'm not a very conscientious type of individual who really looks at people in a way, to make those kind of subtle critiques. Obviously, I have eyes, I see beauty, I see those I find attractive and so on and so forth. But I wasn't thinking about it before she had mentioned it. I hadn't considered it until she had said something. And of course, consequently, I looked. And let's just simply say that she was right. I've never seen that big cheese-eating grin the same way, afterwards. And when I see him, I don't immediately think about that, so obviously it's not of mine, so I don't see it. But once you recognize it, then it's like somehow the spell is broken, because in addition to seeing his, centered tooth, I seen some other things that were about him that, quite frankly, I'm, he's, I'm not into that, as far as I don't find him or men attractive in that way. But yeah, when I seen Tom Cruise in the past, I mean, I think I can recognize when a man I think is good looking. I mean, I don't think that has to do with any romantic interest or anything like that, or any component there too. I think a man can, rightfully just say that's a good looking guy. George Clooney, Brad Pitt, so on and so forth. That Helmsworth dude, I can see he's a handsome fella. I mean, I don't want to do anything with that, but he's a good looking guy. But I think there too is that exposure, that manipulation that probably I, like many other people, have. I think especially when it comes to men, I don't see their faults. I don't see their blemishes and stuff like that. And I think the same thing can be done with women, although I can't think of a specific instance like the Tom Cruise that I feel equally as obvious about. But I'm sure that they exist. I'm sure they're there. The thing of it is, though, is that, as I said before, it's a part of that standard. It's a part of that perception. It's a part of that thing. And I think a lot of what tends to be centered around beauty, and sometimes talent and a lot of other things, and unfortunately even who's a good person and versus not, I think a lot of that really kind of stems from this hypnotizing that we find ourselves in. Like I said, just like with Tom Cruise, I just assumed that he was an attractive male guy. I assumed that, he was a leading man, and that, ladies probably enjoyed him. Of course, until I was exposed and broken from that hypnosis by this girl that pointed out that, Tom Cruise has a centered tooth, or centered looking tooth. I don't know if he has I don't know if there's a medical diagnosis, but it's I don't want to say disconcerting. It's weird. It's something that, had I not been made aware of, I wouldn't. I maybe have noticed, but once I did, again, I can't really forget it. And if I start thinking about it, I'll see it again, especially with him. But the point is that I think the other things can be applied towards many other things. And I think what's obviously held up as beauty standards, or what is desirable, whether it's fashion, style, or anything else, I think that has a lot more to do with manipulation and what is led up. And so when it comes back to what I started off with, as far as compliments and saying things, I think it can get a lot more convoluted sometimes, and more complicated as well. Meaning, me, I don't generally compliment women on their looks anyways, because one, they didn't ask, and two, rather than, make take the risk of trying to maybe say something nice, it lands and goes the opposite direction and does something else. So therefore, unless I'm actually, know someone, or I've known someone, and I feel as though we have that kind of relationship where I can make an observation and, like, hey, you look very nice. That's really, great the way you put that together, or you're looking lovely today, or beautiful, or something like that. I usually just refrain, because, again, especially when it comes to women, a lot of times they don't ask. And it's not necessarily that they don't care, but I think everyone has their vulnerabilities, and sometimes people will build up their own walls, and a lot of times that'll have to do many times more with their response to a compliment or being told they're beautiful than anything else. But the reason I wanted to bring this up is because I kind of felt as though, even though I'm pointing out these observations and things that I've seen, I think it's really sad. I think it's unfortunate that we've arrived at this point. I'm not talking about, saying anything and everything you want to someone or the anticipation or expectation from them. I'm just saying that I think it would be kind of nice if there was the understanding on the other end of things as well, meaning that the same perception that we can find that is manipulated and, is brought over and in thought is a monolith or a group thinking or everyone sees the same thing. Maybe that the other end, the flips of that can also be appreciated and acknowledged as well, which is not everybody sees the same thing. Not everybody is exposed in the same way. And not everyone is under the same hypnosis, in terms of what they see because of whatever they've been exposed to or, made to think should be one way or another. I think beauty is in the eye of the beholder in that way. I think obviously the counter to that as well, can we all agree what ugly is or what isn't attractive? I could say probably, I think in a general overall consensus and basis. But again, perceptions, I think consensuses can change, especially in something as arbitrary as looks and what people feel one way about as opposed to another. I mean, sometimes I think the other thing too that people can kind of get in a habit of, especially when people kind of deviate from that mass, production or produced idea about certain things, is that sometimes when certain people have particular likes or things that they find attractive overall versus someone else, that sometimes people who don't like or see or agree to the same thing sometimes can then, of course, assign certain prejudices and ideas about people that like something as to many others who don't. And I think it really kind of, stems from the same place in terms of what I said, as far as perception, and just recognizing that, not all people are going to see things the same way. And then the ones that do ultimately, for the most part, I don't think that that's necessarily correct or superior. I think it's just as much about nature as many other condensed ideas and setups. Meaning, like I said, a woman can be beautiful, and a guy can be handsome, but what makes someone those things can have a wide range and many different reasons for that determination. And so, like I said, beauty be in the eye of the beholder. I don't know. I mean, I think intentions and motivations, whenever there's a critique or review on someone's look or style or art itself, I think that's important to, maybe scrutinize, a little bit where that comes from. But I think for the most part, I just wish as a human being and as people sometimes that we could get to a place where it could be also generally accepted that what one might find beautiful and another one does not isn't necessarily in a contextual way bad or good, worse or less. I think, like I said, beauty is in the eye of the beholder, but I don't think that ignores the fact that some people have a certainly a general idea about that as well. And I think more to it than anything, and this is just my leaving off on this, is that to me, when I see beauty, it is more than skin deep, although if we're talking about it in a superficial sense, and that's what I've been, drawing comparisons and talking about. But I think the other component to it is that there's also something to be said for looking beyond the superficial as well. And I think that can also have a lot to do with beauty, meaning that, when I see an older couple that has been together for a long time, and obviously things probably don't look the same way as they did when they started out, but there's still that love, there's still that connection, there's still that warmth, and there's still that beauty. To me, I think the most beautiful thing that there can be about a person is a life that's been lived. One where we have all of our faults, because everyone does, whether they be a supermodel or a seriously handsome actor or considered actor. We've all got flaws. We all have things that aren't quite right or maybe perfect about us, because I don't know that there's a thing such as perfection. I mean, people seek it or whatever, but looking beyond the pale, at least in my opinion, having that experience, and I am basically talking about my experience, and I'm not preaching or whatever. I'm just saying that I look and I see beauty in people, both on a superficial line and on a deeper. And I think they can be one and the same, and I think they can come together. To me, sometimes the most physically beautiful individuals are some of the most hideous and ugly individuals, or can be at the same time. I don't equate beauty or a superficial standard as being anything and all things. I think they can be considered in one aspect. But I think to ultimately truly be beautiful, and I think this is also a consensus that goes without, which is why I think actors like Tom Cruise kind of generally get looked upon a certain way, is because I think to draw that association with their appearance to what you kind of known of them, having a lot to do with how beautiful they are, as opposed to maybe not superficially how beautiful they aren't. I hope that makes sense. In terms of, like I said, what we assign beauty standards to, and in the way that we look things. Me personally, I think there is superficial. There's also, deeper. But to me, they come together, and I find beauty in what I know of a person in their totality, as opposed to just what I see. And, everyone's got their ugly and good sides, I think. Anyways, I think that's going to do it for this Friday vlog, number 99. And you know what's around the corner on Monday. So hopefully you're ready. We're almost there. I appreciate you hanging with me for all of these vlogs, or whatever vlogs you may have listened to or not. Thanks again. If you like what you're listening to, you know what to do. You've heard it many other places and times before. Subscribe, rate, make a comment. I think, honestly, the comment, participate. I mean, share your thoughts and ideas. Anyways, that's going to do it for this Friday vlog, number 99. Until next time, take care.